Put on your favorite game day gear because college football is heating up and FanDuel wants you to get in on the action. Right now, new customers can get no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in free bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's so many different ways to bet on college football. Bet on the money line, spread, and who you think will win it all with national championship futures. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, now is the perfect time to give it a shot. The app is so easy to use. They're always hooking you up with great promotions. And when you win, you'll get paid fast. Download the FanDuel app and sign up with promo code BLUEWIRE and get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 for college football. That's promo code BLUEWIRE, exclusively on America's #1 sportsbook. 21 or older and present in Arizona. First online real money wager only. Refund issued as non-withdrawable free bets that expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342.
Hey everyone. Welcome to The Final Four is Not on the Schedule. I'm your host, Eric, alongside with expert analyst Rod. Thanks for joining us on the best MSU basketball podcast featuring in-depth recruiting, game matchup, and post-game analysis. We dive deep to give you the best tools to enjoy the Spartans and impress your friends and family. Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod, and here for the Big Ten opener for Michigan State, where they're going to be taking on the Northwestern Wildcats at the Breslin Center. The Wildcats are 5-2, which is actually a pretty good record in the non-conference for them since they actually did play some teams, but their last game was as bad as the loss as Michigan State had at South Bend. They lost at home by almost 30
way worse
to a really bad Pittsburgh team, and which is funny because the game before that, which was why I think we were fairly confident that they would do well against Pittsburgh, is they played really well against Auburn in the championship game of a Feast Week tournament. They lost by a point, I think.
Yeah, they lost 43-42. So what they're really, and trust me, Auburn doesn't like playing games in the 40s. That's not what they want to do.
I'm sure.
So
not.
Northwestern did a really good job of uglying that up, which is what they're going to have to do. And I was pretty confident that Pitt, I thought at least going into that game might be the worst major college team or major conference team in America. They've got some competition for that. Florida State, Cal. Yeah. A number of our listeners, I'm sure, have seen Pitt play, and certainly have seen Michigan play a number of times. So the Michigan is playing miserably, and Michigan ran Pitt out of the gym. I mean, absolutely destroyed them. So I figured that was going to be an easy win for Northwestern, and it was anything but. They got ripped. So I don't know what to think about Northwestern. The metrics still tell a pretty good story about who they are defensively.
Right.
Offensively, they're a total mess. But I'm not sure about the defense because they just looked so awful in dealing with Pitt. And granted, sometimes if an opponent is just hitting jumpers, which is what was happening to them, you can look worse than you are. But it was not a very encouraging moment for Chris Collins. I had posted
strong words.
What's that?
You had some strong words about Chris Collins.
Yeah,
I think.
Said that, on the Spartan Mag board, I said Northwestern should probably fire Chris Collins at half court, or words to that effect, because that's just a loss. Not just the fact that you lose, but you lose at home and you lose to a team that's that bad and in that way where you just get destroyed. You compared it to, in no way, shape, or form does it compare to what happened to MSU against Notre Dame. I mean, I'm not sugarcoating the way that MSU lost that game, but there were reasons. And whatever I think about Notre Dame, they're probably a team that, if they play to their potential, has a chance to be in the tournament mix. Especially given the ACC looks questionable. So there's a world of difference in these two losses. And MSU is back home. We think they're going to have Jaden Akins back. So there are reasons to be positive. But hey, it's the Big Ten opener, so you gotta take it seriously.
Sure. Yeah, so Northwestern's coming into the game ranked 74th in KenPom, which is, I think, higher than they usually are coming into the season.
That they're in the inside of the top 100.
Yeah, right. It's
the Auburn
unusual for
game
them.
helped them a
Sure.
lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So offensively, though, they're not very good. They're 174th, as you had mentioned. They, even when they were close to Auburn, they only scored 42 points. They've been really bad shooting. They're 31.8% from three, which ranks them 231st, and 327th from the 2-point range. They're 144th in turnover percentage and 132nd in offensive rebounding. So, offensively, they're just a mess. Defensively, as you mentioned, they're better.
Nothing bails them out on offense. And to take it back half a step, they really got hurt by a couple of transfer decisions. Pete Nance, who was their best player, opted to transfer to North Carolina in the offseason. And Ryan Young, who is far from a perfect player, but his strengths, his ability to score in the post and his ability to rebound, particularly on the offensive end, are real strengths. And he's playing a significant role for Duke. If they had retained those two guys, we'd be talking about this team in a very different context, I believe. I would have felt coming into the season with that kind of group that they would be a team worthy of discussion around a tournament bid.
Yeah.
But you take that away and you've got a very, very, very different scenario in Evanston, where they just don't have a lot on the interior. Their guards are guys who over the course of their careers have been good in streaks, but have never been reliably efficient players. And they're playing that way this year as well. So you add it all up, you're not getting really a positive in any area. They can't shoot. They turn the ball over more than you'd like, and they don't offensive rebound very well.
Yeah, well, and it explains the fact that they're scoring 40-some points a game, against Auburn, right? Because you limit your opportunities. If you don't make the score very often and you don't give yourself second chances, and you're throwing the ball away even before you get a shot off, you're not going to score much.
Their opportunity is to ugly games up.
Yeah.
That's what they have to do. If it's a free flowing game where teams are scoring with relative ease, it's hard to see a path for them to win very many of those. Right. Not in a league like the Big Ten.
Sure. And so defensively, they are better. As you mentioned, they muck things up. They're ranked 25th, even despite that bad loss to Pittsburgh. They're number 1 against 2-point shots, and they're number 55 in turnover percentage, with being 42nd in steals. Defensive rebounding is at 109th, which is not terrible, but it's not that great either for a Power 5 school.
Yeah, they it's an interesting mix. They're much more aggressive in some ways with trapping in the half court, just getting after it. I think they're 42nd in steal percentage. So that turnover number is not a fluke. Sometimes you might have a team that's just benefiting from opponents' mistakes, and they might have a high defensive turnover percentage. Not the case with Northwestern. They're earning a lot of those. So that's kind of different from them. The fact that they're this good against twos is really interesting because they're not a team with much rim protection. I mean, their best shot blocker is their reserve backup, Matt Nicholson. And I think he's averaging a block and a half a game, which is all right, but it's, it's hardly Dikembe Mutombo out there. and so it's interesting to me that they've been that good against twos. Conversely, I think they're 100th against threes. And in the Pitt game, for example, the deal there was they were giving up a lot of good looks and Pitt was hitting them over and over and over. Now, there will be nights where you might be able to give up open looks and have the opponent just miss them, but it was not that night for Northwestern, and that had something to do with why it got out of hand quickly. But I think the bottom line is, and we'll turn back to this when we discuss the keys, you're probably not going to have a great deal of success if you're basing your offense around what happens inside the arc. You're probably going to need to shoot decently to really, really take it to this team.
Well, let's just talk about the starters on the Northwestern team then. We'll begin with the best named player in the league, Boo Buie. 6'2" senior guard, averaging a little under 13 points a game on 35, 33, and 88 shooting. He tops out at over 4 assists a game, but also averaging 3 turnovers a game and has 4 rebounds a game. And he's a guy who has punished us before and times when we've controlled him.
Yeah, and that's what is going to haunt Michigan State fans about this game going into it is remembering seasons past where Boo Booey's just gone off. And that is the scary thing with him and with the other guard we'll discuss in a second, Chase Audich. They're similar players in this way. They both take terrible shots. Objectively, the shot selection from these two guards is very poor. The problem is just often enough they will get on a hot streak where those bad shots fall. And to try to deal with that can be a tough thing for an opponent. So that's the concern with Boo Booey is that he bad shots his way into a good night. Thus far this season, you laid out the shooting numbers. It's not good. But the scary thing is, he's capable of more. We just saw that, although I think Cormac Ryan is a very different kind of player. I don't think the guard for Notre Dame, I don't think he takes bad shots. He just wasn't hitting anything. And you kind of knew that eventually he was going to have a game where they were going to fall. And it just so happened that it was against Michigan State. This is different because Bowie is probably not going to get great looks, but he might still hit some. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could probably look at his shooting numbers, 35 overall from the field and 33 from three. That shows that he's not, when he's going even inside his twos, he's not taking very good shots, right? It should be quite a bit higher than the 3-point shot percentage, I would think.
Yeah.
Next would be Chase Audich. He's a 6'4" senior wing, averaging 12.4 points a game on 37, 36, and 81 shooting. He's second in the team assist with 29 in 7 games, but also has a lot of turnovers at 20. And he was injured quite a bit last year, didn't shoot great, and we both felt that he was going to be a better shooter and just look better this year than he has because of his injuries limiting him last season.
He's having a bounce back season to an extent, and the shooting numbers aren't as bad as they are for Bowie. They're a little better, and much better than he shot last year. This is the real Chase Audich. But again, he's another guy. He will take shots that will really leave you scratching your head. I mean, early in the shot clock, well contested from 30 feet. I mean, he does it all. And just enough of them fall that can leave you frustrated as a defense because, he will hit some shots that you just know he has no business taking, never mind making.
And next would be Ty Berry, 6'3" junior, averaging 10.4 points a game on 34, 30, 88 shooting and grabbing 6 boards a game.
Yeah, the rebounding number is impressive for him because he's not big. So he's obviously chasing down a lot of long rebounds off 3 attempts, I would think. He's been a better shooter than this in his career. He's in his junior year. So this is his 3rd season. He shot much better than this from 3 in the past. He, as opposed to the other 2 guys, I think he generally displays a little better shot selection. But even though that 3-point number isn't very good, he is a guy you've got to guard out there. He's dangerous.
And next would be Robbie Barron, 6'9" senior, averaging 10.1 points a game on 38, 39, and 79 shooting, leading the team at 6.6 rebounds a game. And he's definitely a player we talked about in the preview that we just thought there's a lot to him, and you just kind of wish you saw a little bit more production from him, but that he's an impressive player because he only averages 9 shots a game.
Yeah, not even a little under that.
Yeah.
I've said it for 3 years running now. The biggest problem with Robbie Barran is, I would think, is between Robbie Barran's ears, that he either doesn't believe that he should be the man or lacks confidence, whatever it is, because he's been a very efficient player for them really his whole career. And then you look at the actual production they get, and at least for me, I'm left wondering, why doesn't this guy take more shots? And he's still not taking enough shots. He's a very good player. He just doesn't impose himself enough.
Next would be Thijs Verhoeven. He's a 6'9", 230-pound transfer from UTEP. He's filling in for the departed Ryan Young, and I suppose Pete Nance too. He's averaging 3.1 points a game and 4.1 rebounds a game in about 19 minutes, where he's sharing with the 5 spot with Matt Nicholson. He's shooting 44% from the floor and a miserable 33% at the line.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically a space filler. I that's probably a little bit overly disparaging because he's part of their defensive effort against twos. But yeah, offensively and as a rebounder, he's not contributing a whole hell of a lot. But they need size, and he's giving them that. And
so then going on to the reserves, we'll start with Matt Nicholson, who is the fill-in for Verhoeven when he's on the floor, 7-foot junior. He's from Clarkston, and we weren't quite sure what was going to happen at that 5 spot being the season, but it looks like Nicholson has been able to sort of impose himself as the number 2 guy there. He's averaging 6.3 points a game and 5 rebounds a game, and as you mentioned earlier, with 1.5 blocks a game, shooting 67% from the floor. And his not quite as miserable, but pretty close at 40% from the line.
He's a guy that, Nicholson is a kid that I thought was always on the fringes of maybe getting a Michigan State offer, and he never did. And I thought at the time Northwestern got him, that was a really sneakily good recruiting get, because he has legitimate size. At 7 feet, he can move okay. He's not Drew Namick or Jaren Jackson, somebody like that, but he can move okay. He's not a stiff. And I just thought with some time in a Big Ten weight training program and just to continue to develop his game, that he could be a really effective player. I thought at a Michigan State, he might be a guy kind of akin to what we're hoping Carson Cooper is able to become, where, maybe by his junior year, he's a very reliable rotation guy that you're very happy to have as a backup, that kind of thing. It hasn't really developed quite the way I thought it would for him, but he's been better this year with a bigger role. There's no doubt about that. What I've been surprised by is that he hasn't been able to get a whole lot steadier. And what I mean by that is he was a guy that when I saw him play in high school in AAU, and I saw him a fair amount, especially later in his high school career, he just always seemed to not have a good base. Like if you see big guys, sometimes you'll see them. Mahdi, I guess, was like this a lot, right? Where every time you notice them on the floor, they seem to kind of be sprawled out. They're not playing off 2 feet. They're unsteady. They seem to be flailing a lot,
Mm-hmm.
And usually that gets solved with increased lower body strength, your legs, you kind of get your legs under you, so to speak. And when I've seen, or I watched the Pitt game, Nicholson, still, there was too much of that for my taste. So he's in his 3rd year in their program. I'm a little bit surprised that's still going on, but with his size, he's still able to impact games occasionally. And he's a kid who I'm sure is going to be very motivated by playing Michigan State.
Sure. And the fact that he's 7 foot helps, and you think, and with the guy in front of him, Verhoeven is not, he's not like lighting it up and being amazing. So it's definitely this opportunity still for him to maybe steal that starting role before the end of the season.
Yeah, he might see an increase. He might see increased minutes eventually because the other guy isn't wowing you. For now, they're kind of splitting the position.
Yeah, got to go with experience. So Brooks Barnheiser, a 6'6" sophomore, didn't play much as a sophomore, but he's playing a little bit more this year. He's averaging 22 minutes a game, scoring 5.4 points a game on 35, 19, and 69 shooting, and 4 rebounds a game.
Yeah, he's getting a lot more minutes because somebody has to. They were really excited about him as a recruit last year, and then he wasn't able to break through into their rotation. But he is this year, still not shooting the ball very well at all, and that's what they thought he could do coming out of high school. So that's been a little disappointing.
Yeah, 19 is not good percentage. Nick Martinelli is next. He's a 6'7" freshman. He's only played a few games this season. Played a decent amount against Pitt in that losing effort, averaging 2.3 points a game and 1.3 rebounds a game, shooting 33% overall and 50%, just 1 of 2 from 3.
Yeah, he was a recruit they were happy to land. I'm forgetting now. I know he was previously committed to somebody else, then decommitted, ended up at Northwestern. I think there might have been a coaching change.
Was he from Chicago?
Like yeah, he's from the Chicago area.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, he hasn't been playing much, and then he played 16 minutes against Pitt. I've got him down here because it's possible they, especially in a Big Ten game, they might want to go a little deeper, but it's hard to know if he'll play much in this one.
And finally, Julian Roper, 6'5" wing from Orchard Lake St. Mary's. He's been trying to work through an injury on the upper body and hasn't played the last 4 games. Doesn't sound like he'll play this one, but it's possible. He was only scoring about 3 points a game on 43, 25, and 50 shooting, but can be a pretty good player when he's healthy, right?
Yeah, very good. And the numbers, even when he played, are bad enough. I just can't get a lot of detail, and I spent some time looking at it on the nature of the injury, but it's his numbers when he did play were bad enough that it made me wonder if it was something that was lingering and they just decided to shut him down. So it was affecting his play when he did see the court.
Right.
Collins has said it's a week to week thing. And I just don't see a lot of signs that he'll play, but we put him down because he might. He's healthy. He's a very good player. I thought he was perhaps ready to have a little bit of a breakthrough season for them. He's a very good two-way wing. He gives them some athletic ability that they don't necessarily otherwise have on this team. And again, I think he's a very capable defender as well. So good player. It's a shame if he's going to continue to be hindered like this.
Well, before we get into the 5 keys, I mean, Michigan State's come into this Big Ten season, although it's, the abbreviated Big Ten season, and then we'll go back to the non-conference. But at least that first 8-game stretch coming in at 5-3, I think we thought there's a reasonable chance to be 6-2 until, that the wheels fell off early in that Notre Dame game. But 5-3 is pretty respectable. There's some big wins, and even the losses were all against very high quality opponents. So there's nothing to be ashamed of.
There's no bad loss yet.
Yeah, and you've lost, and you were playing half those games with arguably 2 of your best players, or at least 2 of your top 6 players. So, there's every reason to be optimistic about the season. And as you mentioned earlier, there's every reason to think that Jaden Akins is going to be playing in this game. Probably not starting, I imagine. He's probably going to be playing in a reserve role off the bench, but he may be the first person off the bench. We'll have to kind of see what happens there.
Yeah, I would hope that it'll be similar to what we saw against Northern Arizona and Gonzaga, where he plays. It's not huge minutes, but it's enough to, maybe in the teens somewhere where he's able to have an impact. And, look, where MSU is clearly missing them. I mean, people always get caught up in offense, but to me, it's pretty clearly the defensive end where the absence of Hall and Akins is really being felt. And, it stands to reason if you think about it. They no longer have a bigger wing to defend, the Brandon Millers of the world. They don't have that. They don't have a Jaden Akins who you can put out there against just about anybody on the perimeter and know that he'll do an effective job. And it's not just not having those guys, but then the guys who have to play, Pierre Brooks playing a much larger role, you're losing a lot. Let's put it that way on the defensive end. And so that's where I think the absence has been felt. So if you get Jaden Akins back, it doesn't solve everything, but I think it will make them markedly better defensively overall just by having him back in the rotation regularly. It's going to help.
And absolutely. And the fact that he's going to be an offensive threat too. There are definitely a bunch of lineups that were out there against Notre Dame. You're just like, I don't know where the scoring's coming from at this point. And
this is the problem. And Izzo kind of acknowledged it in the Notre Dame game. Look at the second half. He comes out of the second half and he starts Jason Whitens instead of Pierre Brooks. And that was the right thing to do because Pierre was awful defensively in the first half, just awful. But the problem is if you start Jason Whitens, you are also giving up a fair amount on the offensive end. So Pierre Brooks comes back in because, we're down, we need points. So as a coach, you're put in a very difficult position. When you have a Jaden Akins and you have a Malik Hall, you're getting both sides of the court addressed, which is what you want.
Yeah, the compromising makes it, picking offense for defense, not the end of the game situation. Yeah.
And then you've got Pierre Brooks back in the role that he's best suited for right now, which is, okay, he's a guy we asked to come in and provide a little instant offense, and we'll hope we survive it defensively. I always say that with guys like that, the longer you have to play them, the worse it's going to get. It's the old diminishing returns scenario, because the longer they're out there, the more likely it is the other team is going to figure out, oh, we can attack this guy, and they'll do so. You might get an initial burst when they come on the floor. They come out and hit a couple of shots, but you want to be able to get them in, get them out. And MSU doesn't really have that, hasn't had that option over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And if moving to the 5 keys of the game, the first one is defense, and you kind of touch on most of those things, how getting Akins back not only helps the offensive end, but probably more than anything helps you on the defensive end, and probably the defensive rebounding edge, although that has not been as much of a problem the first part of the season.
No.
But, the Wildcats, obviously, they have the 2 guards that can go off and suddenly, get hot. And so you have to make sure you have someone, if someone looks like they're heating up, you can hopefully just put Akins on them just to shut them down.
Northwestern's likely to do some of the work themselves for you because they're going to take bad shots.
Yeah.
But Michigan State's task is to make those shots worse. So if he's going to pull up from 25, okay, that's probably a bad shot, but still manage to at least semi-contest it. Make it under duress. Don't just allow him to get off cleanly and in rhythm. That's the task. When I look at Northwestern's team, unless Robbie Baran's whole approach to the game changes dramatically, I don't see a lot of paths to wins for them if their guards aren't really getting it done on offense. So if you can hold those guys down somewhat, you're in good shape.
The number 2 key to the game is the transition game. So it's always hard in the Big Ten to score and transition because all the teams know us. They know what to do. They've seen us twice, once or twice a year at least. But it's obviously the easiest way for us to get our offense, especially when we're down Malik Hall.
And this has been hard too because, again, they're down bodies. So it makes it hard to run the way you want to as Michigan State. But what I'm hoping is Northwestern has been a little questionable in ball security terms. So if MSU can benefit from a few turnovers for touchdowns, as Izzo likes to characterize it, that could really help, because anytime you're not going against their half-court defense, you're better off.
I always feel, too, that one of the best parts of Michigan State's transition game is oftentimes you're heading down, you're pushing it, you're not able to get anything initially, but then the trailing man is the one who's going to get an open 3, and that would be most often is Joey Hauser, which is, I'm sure, why he usually inbounds after that.
Right.
We haven't seen a whole lot of that this year. Do you think it just other teams are just keyed into it and they've been defending it? I can't say I've been watching specifically.
I just think Michigan State hasn't been able to get out and transition very much. And some of that is on them, and some of it is a credit to the opposition. I think when you look at these games they've played in, Portland, Oregon, Villanova, those teams did a really good job, I felt, of prioritizing floor balance. Now it's helping Michigan State in another way, which you mentioned. Their defensive rebounding has been better. And part of that, the best it's been in years, as a matter of fact. And part of that, I think, is because other teams have not been committing to trying to offensive rebound against them. They've instead been prioritizing floor balance. Interestingly, I think the 2 best games for the transition game for MSU were against Gonzaga and Kentucky. So that's a couple things. That's maybe those teams were trying to be more competitive on the offensive glass. And then conversely, MSU also had a full deck of cards to play with, which they haven't had lately.
The one outlier, I guess you'd say, is the Alabama game. Alabama was, they were still crashing the boards pretty hard, and they were able to. We weren't able to do a whole lot against them in transition.
Right, but I think they were successful on the offensive boards to an extent, and so that if the other team's getting those, that's going to make it tough.
Right.
But MSU was still shorthanded.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So next would be perimeter shooting. Northwestern's defense has not been that great. Michigan State is, I think, even better shooting team than what they've been showing, but they've looked pretty good so far this season.
Yeah, they're okay. They're a little under 37% as a team, so slightly off last season's pace, but they're basically one good game from getting back there or beyond it. Northwestern is likely to give up looks, so if you're Michigan State, I think in a game like this, you got to have some 3-point production. I think if this is one of those, 4 for 20 kind of nights from three, it could be a much tougher road than you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
You need to take advantage and you need to hit some shots. Because Northwestern, just the numbers of the performance tell us they're probably not going to give up a lot anyway. And the reality is, it's not like Michigan State has been an effective scoring team inside the arc either. They're in the 240s, I think, in 2-point percentage. So that's once again not been a strength of this team.
So next is turnovers. This is a very strange situation. I'm not used to having seen Michigan State with a pretty decent turnover percentage. They're number 52.
Yeah,
we've had a number of games this season where it's single digits, and I feel like you go through entire seasons where you see maybe 2 the whole year, and
right.
Now we've already had, I think, 2 or 3.
Yeah, it's Michigan State's had issues at times this year, but this isn't one of them. This area, and there's a big gap between these two teams statistically. Now, I will say, as we mentioned, Northwestern's defense 42nd in the country in steal percentage, so they've actually been able to generate turnovers with their defense. So Michigan State's going to have to be strong with the ball. But if they can do that, this is an area where you can maybe get a little bit of separation. You'll look to do that. And boy, doesn't that feel strange.
Yeah,
saying that, but it's true, at least to date. Michigan State, the one thing they're not doing, they're not killing themselves with giveaways.
Yeah, and you can afford to be a little bit worse offensive rebounding if your turnover percentage is lower. And what's nice of this team is actually the rebounding's been pretty good. And that's the fifth key to the game, that Northwestern has not been a good rebounding team on either end, but it's definitely not the offensive end. And Michigan State's offensive rebounding has been, I guess, poor,
Bad.
but missing. Yeah,
Bad.
they're missing some players right now. But defensively, they've been pretty good, which is, at least that part's good.
Yeah, it's the best it's been, as I mentioned, in like 5 seasons. They're currently in the 70s, I believe, in defensive rebounding. Last season, they were outside the top 100. So that is a good number. And, again, how much of it is opposition choosing to not contest a lot, or how much of it is really Michigan State being better? It's a combination of the two. But nevertheless, I'll take the improvement. So I think these two things combined, what you want to see, there's a path here whereby you could see Michigan State getting more opportunities to score. And that's really, if you want an easy win, an easy-ish win, rarely are there easy wins in the Big Ten. But if you want one that's a little more comfortable, that's a good path to getting it done, is that way. Have a turnover margin, have a rebounding margin.
Well, Michigan State is an 8-point favorite per KenPom. We don't have any Vegas lines out yet at the time of this recording. This is a game, obviously, it's a Big Ten game. These actually all really, all count, even though it's in December. It's kind of a weird time to be playing the Big Ten season.
Yeah.
This is one that we need to get. It's at home. You've got to protect home court. Last year, Northwestern came in and beat Michigan State, so you obviously hope that this doesn't happen again this year. I like our odds in this game, and I actually like that line. I think Michigan State should win by double digits, but I guess I think it's possible, obviously.
Yeah, what you hope. I mean, the good news is, with that debacle on Wednesday night, at least it was in South Bend, so that was an easy trip. They were home that night, I would assume, early morning, but still. So you've had several days to rest. Start to get your legs back underneath you after that West Coast trip, and then going right to South Bend. And hopefully you get Jaden Akins back. We also found out after we recorded our post game that apparently Tyson Walker had a family tragedy that day the day of the Notre Dame game that impacted him. That could explain certainly some of his play maybe not being at the top level of what we've seen. So all of those things should be better. And yeah, look, it's pretty simple. Home court game against a team that's not expected to be in tournament contention. That's one you got to get. You lose a game like this, it immediately puts more pressure on you to steal one on the road that you weren't counting on at the start of the season. Right. You know, that's the dynamic. And you don't want to be in that position if you're Michigan State, obviously. So it's one that definitely you're looking at as one that you need, you know, to achieve all the goals that you've got. So we'll hope that they can get that done.
I like this team. I think we've got a good future in the league this year, even though the league is going to be harder than we probably anticipated originally. But you know, we're not at full strength, and I think the margin for error for having a sloppy game is just not real great. And so that this team is not going to overwhelm a lot of teams this year. They're going to have to play well and good connected basketball, which they've done for the most part this season. And obviously not the last game, but that's going to be the key to this team. And, you know, again, I still think we're still a little bit in survival mode until we get into the January schedule, until Malik Hall gets back, hopefully. And, you know, that is a wild card too. We don't know for sure Malik Hall's, you know, there are plenty of times he's going to come back in 3 weeks and it turns out to be 6 or 7. So we can only assume that, but it does sound like Jaden Akins is pretty much a sure thing, and he seems to be doing well. So we can at least assume that he'll be back at least.
You have to hope that everything with Malik stays on course, that Jaden has truly gotten past it now, and that it's, you know, it's smooth sailing with those guys from a health perspective, and that nobody else gets hurt. You're right about the margin for error. That's the problem, and yet I don't know that it's fundamentally that different for anybody else. You know, anyone who pretends that, you know, oh, there are teams out there that go 13 deep, those days are gone, man. You just can't construct rosters that way because kids aren't going to be patient enough. You know, a young player who might have potential but is sitting behind a bunch of veterans for the first couple of years he's in your program, that's not a common thing anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and so consequently, every program is, in my opinion, going to be riding that edge, you know, in terms of needing to keep people healthy and in the lineup. But the truth is, Michigan State does not have a big margin for error, in part because they don't have those one or two guys. You know, there's no Denzel Valentine on this team. There's no Cassius Winston. There's nobody that you could say, even if you're down a body or two, all right, we're shorthanded, but this guy can just carry us for a while. They don't have that kind of player, you know? So it's, as you said, it's interconnectedness. They all need to be functioning well as a group, as a unit. And so that's what we'll hope to see starting to come back into focus as they get one of these guys, we think, back in play on Sunday, and hopefully shortly thereafter in the next couple of weeks, we'll see the other one.
You know, finally, it's not a key to the game, but I always feel like AJ Hoggard is almost his own key to how well this team plays. You know, what kind of things are you looking for? I mean, we look at a guy who, at times when he wants to, he really can be pretty dominant on both offensively and even defensively. He can be really good. What are you looking for in the game, and like what will be assigned to you that he's locked in and he's, you know, the good AJ, and what's the concerning things out there?
That he's defending well, and that he's playing to his strengths offensively. So defending well is pretty simple. Is he not going under screens? Is he getting up on top of them? Is he locating and closing on shooters? Is he not giving up penetration too easily? You know, all of those things that are part of what he's tasked with. Is he doing those? And then offensively, I think a bad sign for him early is when, you know, he's a very effective penetrator, as we know, but when he over penetrates and when you're watching him as a viewer, you can pretty much always see it coming, which is what makes it amazing that he doesn't feel it.
Yeah.
But you see those offensive foul. I mean, AJ very rarely gets called for an offensive foul where you didn't see it coming a full second or two before it happens. Those kind of moments are the ones that tell me he's not locked in. So those are the things that I pay attention to. I don't worry about is the jumper falling or any of that nonsense. Just make the plays that you're capable of making, play within yourself, be connected with your teammates, and be focused.
Well, I'll be at the Breslin Center on Sunday enjoying my ice cream sandwich, and I guess everyone else will enjoy to see you there, or if you're sitting on the couch watching the game. Just a couple announcements here. To a reminder from a scheduling standpoint, we will be recording our show after the Penn State game for that post game with retired assistant coach Mike Garland. We're looking forward to that. That should be fun, having real coach's insight into what he saw and I guess what he thought of our keys to the game in our scouting report to begin with.
Yeah.
Then also, I would like to thank a new Scott Skiles patron on Patreon, Michelle Mazzara. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And thanks to all the other people who support our show on Patreon. You can sign up for that and you can get to our website at thefinalfoursontheschedule.com/support. I would really encourage you, if you've not yet visited our site. It has all our episodes. It has a forum, which in case you can interact with other Spartans in our community. And we've finalized our t-shirt design. We're going to be sending it to the printer soon-ish. And so we'll be getting more details out about that in the near future. Those who are supporters of ours on the Mateen Cleaves level, which is $25 a month, you can sign up for that at Patreon if you want to get in and get that opportunity to get that t-shirt as well. We'll get that out by the end of next week. And then, I don't know, we'll just kind of figure out what we're going to do for t-shirts beyond that. But it's a really sweet design. I'm very excited to get one of my own. I'm looking forward to wearing it to the Breslin Center at the next game. Also, the contest for the free t-shirt contest with the Big Ten predictions. We've gotten a number of entries in. There's still time, although technically there's some games, Big Ten games that are starting before they start as early as Friday. You still can, as long as it's post-dated or whatever the email term is for post-date is, as long as it's in by the time the Michigan State game starts on Sunday evening, that's fine. So if you want to wait till the last second to get a little bit of insider information, know one game, you could get that. All you have to do is send in the prediction for the Big Ten standings at the end of the season, 1 through 14, and then send in along with your name and the amount of points you think Michigan State will score against the University of Michigan this season. And I guess that's pretty much it, unless there's anything else you have.
Let me just add one thing. So as we're wrapping this up, I see that Izzo had his post-practice press conference. So to what we were speaking about, Jaden Akins this is per Kyle Austin of MLive. Jaden Akins went through 3/4 of today's practice. He's a maybe for Sunday per Izzo. And that maybe, I would think, is contingent upon his practicing tomorrow and being okay as well. Also mentioned Christmas as a potential return timeline for Malik Hall, which sounds like I think he's using Christmas loosely.
Yeah.
But that sounds like that's on track, because that's what we've been talking about. Yeah. So it doesn't sound like there's nothing earth shaking there on either front, but it does sound like everything is more or less on track.
And every Michigan State Spartan fan is spooked by what happened with Josh Langford. And, more sort of aware of foot injuries and problems because, they do weird things. And his was a super, unique situation. But it's one that rightfully has people concerned. And so anytime you hear someone's getting a foot injury, you're worried that it's going to last, all season. And so it's encouraging to hear that these guys are getting better. And, again, as you mentioned a couple episodes ago, had that been a tournament game, Akins would have played. I mean, he was not injured to the point where he can't play. He was just had some pain, and there's no point risking it for a game in South Bend or, huge, like a couple games out in Portland.
Right. I'll also add one more thing. So Keon Coleman, Izzo apparently addressed him. He said he'll have more discussions next week about bringing Keon Coleman and Malik Carr over. He said nothing's imminent, but if you've been paying attention, you've seen there's been some workout stuff where Keon Coleman's been shooting at the practice facility. So he said Coleman's recovering from a minor injury. If you recall, he was a little banged up with a hip in that Penn State game. I would anticipate that Keon Coleman's probably going to play. And Izzo made some comment apparently about Malik Hall's position makes it difficult to play both. I'm assuming he's talking about his football position. And I'm guessing here because all I'm working from is from a very bare bones quote. I would think he's probably talking about, the increased need to add good weight and strength, because his basketball position is a 4-man. I don't think it requires much. To me, that's the easiest position to transition from, from a basketball perspective. Yeah. But, I was very, very pessimistic about Keon Coleman last year. And, I have to admit, he showed more than I thought he would in coming over. That does not mean that I think he's capable of being a major contributor in basketball. But I saw enough last year to at least feel as if I shouldn't be completely dismissive about his getting into the rotation somewhere. Athletically, my God, he's a very gifted athlete. We knew that, but I was surprised by the level of his ball skills. So we'll see. I would never expect anything other than spot duty in a best case scenario, but who knows?
Yeah, there are a lot of fans who seem really intent in having him play a lot. I mean, they really want Keon Coleman. They say, from a depth standpoint. And I guess I understand why people feel that way. And maybe from a practice standpoint, it's useful having another, high-level athlete on your practice squad. I guess I don't see a whole lot of minutes for him. And, are you going to play him
if they're healthy?
Well, right.
Not
well,
if they're
let's
healthy.
say that. Let's say even right now. I mean, if your choice here, Tom Izzo, are you going to play Jason Whitens or are you going to play Keon Coleman? Let's say, those are your two options. I still think you pick Whitens because I don't see where Coleman brings a whole lot extra. Maybe he's got a little scoring punch that Whitens might have, but from a defensive standpoint, there's just no question you'd rather have Whitens out there.
Yeah, I think I would be inclined to agree with you, but I will tell you this. Late in the season, I was told by somebody who has a direct connection to someone on the coaching staff, like a familial connection.
Yeah, okay.
That they were really impressed by the way Keon Coleman picked things up. And Izzo has mentioned that even this offseason, when he's been asked about it, that they were really impressed by the way he picked things up. So the way I interpret that, usually what he's talking about first and foremost is, he gets it defensively. We know that athletically, in terms of his frame and everything, well, he's built to be a defender, right? But you still have to be able to pick it up conceptually. And I think they were pretty impressed by that. I guess I'm just going to have to fall into the wait and see camp on that. I don't think it's a big difference maker either way, most likely. Mm-hmm. But I am less skeptical of it than I was at this time last year. We'll put it that way.
Well, and certainly the advantage for him this year is he has an extra 3 or 4 weeks to join the team and get acclimated to the team versus last year where they were coming off a bowl game in mid, he's not really joined the team till mid-January.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like Malik Hall is going to be a person who's just going to be basically reserves and comes in with Davis Smith and Steven Izzo?
If he plays, I think he's more of the practice squad, giving you a physical body. It's a shame too, because I know I said it a lot last year, and it looks like I'm ending up on the wrong end of this, but my feeling going in was I had never seen Keon Coleman play basketball other than in clips, but I had seen a lot of Malik Hall play basketball, a lot. I probably saw him play, at least 10 times, maybe more in high school and AAU. And I thought Malik Hall could have been a very good Division I basketball player. Not a star, but he was a really good and versatile defender. Could guard a lot of different types of guys at his size. I loved the attitude he played with. It's funny because in football, it feels like he gets dinged a lot. Even the coaching staff will mention it that, he's not yet physical enough at the point of attack as a blocker. He doesn't do some of the things they want a tight end to do. Whereas in basketball, And that kid was nothing but an ass kicker. I mean, that's what he was. He was just physical as all get out, no back down in him. He was tough. And so I liked that. To me, that was an equation that translates. You could see the translation, because if you're playing a guy like that, where all you're asking him to do basically is go check and rebound, well, you can do that the moment you step on the practice court.
Sure.
You don't need time to get acclimated, right? Guys who are more perimeter oriented, and you're asking them to hit shots and run an offense and that kind of stuff, that's harder, because that's the stuff that I think tends to atrophy when you're not practicing every day, but it hasn't worked out that way. Keon Coleman, who is a perimeter player, seemed to be much more comfortable than Malik was. It's been surprising to me. And when I say Malik Carr, I mean, I saw Malik Carr do this stuff in EYBL play. He was doing it against the best prospects in the country. So it was real. Basically he was in a front court with he and Isaiah Jackson, who went to Kentucky and now is in the NBA. I mean, that's the level he was playing at, but it just hasn't translated. And so, yeah, at this point, you would just have to assume it's going to be, cannon fodder in the practice squad. And so then it's just a question of if he wants to do that. I mean, I know he loves basketball, so it's not a question of want to, but I guess he's just got to decide, is this the best thing for his future? Whereas I think Keon Coleman seems to be one of those guys that, he's probably not going to do himself any harm by missing a few weeks of football practice, because he seemed to kind of arrive this year, right? Sure. Yeah, maybe you stay a little healthier. Could be. But I mean, I have to admit, I was impressed and surprised by what Keon Coleman showed. But more than that, what I was told by people who really know what's going on, that they were legitimately impressed. Again, don't get it wrong. Nobody was saying, "Oh, we got to get Keon Coleman over here because he could be all Big Ten." More like, God, we could put him on the floor and he wouldn't look totally out of place. That alone, for a football player, think about the number of guys that have come over in the past. Because there have been several that have done this over Izzo's career, and almost never. I mean, there's one guy, Matt Tranit, who's the guy who gives eternal hope to Michigan State fans that every football player is going to be Matt Tranit. Right. And again, there are guys. There was a kid played tight end for MSU, and I believe did some time in the NFL with the Dolphins, Deion Sims. You remember him?
No.
Deion Sims was a hell of a high school basketball player. That kid could play, legit top 100 kind of talent. He never translated when he came over to play basketball. I don't know that he ever saw the floor. Maybe he did, but if he did, it was spot duty, and the experiment didn't last very long. It's a hard transition to make, and the fact that Keon Coleman seems to be capable of making it to whatever extent where he's actually functional, that's pretty remarkable.
You think that the difficulty too, if you're someone like Coleman, is you might be able, like you said, you can go rebound, you can maybe check someone, but can you, make shots, and can you handle the ball when there's something you haven't been doing for a few months? I mean, I imagine he couldn't have been playing hardly any basketball during the football season, outside of maybe just going to I guess you go to the gym and shoot a couple times. I don't know.
The clips I saw the other day from the practice facility, he was taking jumpers, and he wasn't guarded, so there's that. He was hitting them, but his release is not what I would call pure. It's a weird. So I would be skeptical of that, as to how much jump shooting he would be able to provide you with. On the other hand, I wouldn't be skeptical of the idea that he might be able to take somebody off the dribble once or twice and get to the rim and finish. He might be able to do that.
Well, everyone's so hopeful after, I think he hit his first 3, right, last season. And so I think people are like, oh, yeah, right.
Well, what I remember was the crossover that he dusted
right.
off against Michigan at Breslin for a lay-in. That's the kind of stuff that I'm saying. I think he might be able to give you a little bit of that. I wouldn't want him shooting a lot of threes.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you have all the kind of 3-point shooting we've got on the team. There's no reason for him to be doing that. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for this. We'll see everyone after the Northwestern game. And until next time, the Final Four is now on the schedule. Go green.
Football season is underway, so now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's free bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just sign up with promo code BLUEWIRE. FanDuel is great because it has all of your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads to player props. The app is safe, secure, and easy to use, and you get your winnings paid fast. So sign up today with promo code BLUEWIRE for your no-sweat first bet. Make every moment more this season with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 plus in select states. First online real money wager only. Refund issued as non-withdrawable free bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, or Virginia. 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona. 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. 1-800-522-4700 or visit KS Gambling Help in Kansas. 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. The Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789 in Tennessee. 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Or visit www.1800gambler.net in West Virginia.